Yeah, we got lots of room.
I'm bringing my tent.
I like this thing here. Microphone. Can everybody hear me? Welcome. Well, my name is Hannah. I am the Community Education Coordinator here at the Highlands Center. So one of the fun parts of my job is inviting wonderful people like Ken here to give amazing presentations to our community. So thank you all so much for coming today. I'm curious if anyone here has never been to the Highlands Center before. One. That's pretty impressive.
Wow.
For those of you who are familiar with us already, you know that we are a nonprofit organization nestled up here in the Prescott National Forest on about 80 acres, so not a bad playground to be on. Our goal every day is just to serve our community, children and adults, discovering the wonders of nature. And the real goal at the end of the day, right? Become stewards of the land and take care of it for future generations. Hopefully we're all on board with that. I feel like if you're here, you are. These guest speaker talks that we're doing right now are on a donation basis. So I know many of you made donations as you came in. Several made donations online when you registered as well. So your donations help us to pretty much do everything that we do around here. Without it, we couldn't sustain our programs and offer everything that we do to the community. So we're super grateful for your support in that department. And if anyone here is not, actually I'm curious, is anyone here a member of the
Nice. Nice.
I'm like blown away. That was lovely. Well, if you are not a member, you can reach out to us. We have some membership pamphlets I'll be placing over here. Your memberships help us do so many things as well. And then you also get discounts in our store and on other classes here at the Highlands Center. And then one just like housekeeping thing, if you need to use the restroom, you may either exit the store door here or out this exit here, circle around the side of the building and just the next building over to the restroom facility. There's also a water fountain if you need water over there. And then I will introduce now Ken Lamberton, the face you're really looking to see up here on the stage. Ken is the author of Wilderness and Razor Wire. It has won the 2002 John Burroughs Medal for Outstanding Nature Writing. He has published 6 books and hundreds of articles and essays in places like Los Angeles Times, Orion, the Gettysburg Review, the Best American Science and Nature Writing. His latest book, Chasing Arizona, is a 2015 Southwest Book of the Year, and Lamberton holds a degree in biology and creative writing and lives with his wife in an 1890s stone cottage on the Old Mule Road near Bisbee, where he spends his days fixing the plumbing and probably taking in some sort of scenery.
Oh, yeah.
And then for those of you who don't know, if you were here just about a month or so ago, we hosted Ken's lovely daughter, Melissa Seventy. She wrote the book Brave the Wild River. It was one of our book club books this year, so fascinating story. I actually just cracked it open. I haven't finished it yet. But I spent many years working in the Grand Canyon. I heard about this story for years, so I'm excited to really hear more and read more into it. So without further ado, let's give Ken a nice round of applause.
Thank you, Hannah and Maria. You guys have awesome people working for you here. Maria in the back there hiding. Yeah. So how many of you met Melissa when she was here a few weeks ago? Yeah, my daughter. I've been following my daughter a lot lately. Things like this, she does one thing, I say, okay, I'll do that, I guess. If she decides that she's not going to review a manuscript for like U of A Press, they send it to me, which they just did. So yeah, but that's okay. That's what parents are for, right? Give your kids a big shove and off they go. And Melissa's doing some amazing things. And I have 3 just wonderful daughters. I was raised by them, in fact. So we're going to talk about the Sky Islands today. How many are familiar with the Sky Islands or have heard that term before? Yeah, coined by Weldon Hill, I think in the 1940s or 50s. He wrote a book they actually called Sky Islands. And it was later republished as the Chiricahua Mountains. That's where he was living at the time when he coined the term Sky Islands. But you can see why. I mean, this is a picture of the Santa Rita Mountains. It's one of the Sky Islands, right? And it's kind of floating on a bed of clouds. But, Mount Wrightson there reaches up to close to 10,000 feet. So, and it's the picture is taken from Catalina Mountain, so it's looking across Tucson. So where are the Sky Islands? I guess they're mostly in southern Arizona, right? And there's several ranges of them. So if we look at this kind of map of southern Arizona, there's this thing called the Basin and Range Providence, and that's where the Sky Islands are. And a lot of the mountains will sound familiar to you. The Chiricahuas, the Santa Ritas, what else? The Huachucas, all those ranges, and they kind of stretch obliquely across Arizona from across this way like that. And it's an area that kind of was created maybe about 8 million years ago when the landscape started stretching. So it's a different kind of mountain building than what you normally see, like with the volcanism that creates, Mount St. Helens and places like that. This was a region of stretching. So the landscape 8 million years ago began stretching apart through this basin and range area on the map there. And what happened was the valley floors then sank. And so the mountains are more a result of valley floors sinking than mountains rising. And so the valley floor would sink and kind of not just flat, but at an angle. And as it sank, part of it would poke up, and that would be like a mountain range. So you get these, crazy, these are the mountains here. They run kind of in parallel, like this, and they go all the way across like that. It's because those valleys are sinking. So just kind of a little geologic history of it. I'm not going to really go much into the geology of it, but 8 million years ago, they started forming this basin and range providence. So what's interesting about this is it happens to be in a region of enormous biological diversity. And one of the reasons is because of these connections. So we have the Rocky Mountains to the north, right? And we have the Sierra Madre to the south in Mexico. And in between are all these mountain islands. And so what do you think's happening there? It's forming like a land bridge, for the species that can move, that species in the south that want to move north, they're going to come across that Sierra Madre range, and then they're going to kind of skip over the mountains, like the Chiricahuas, into the Catalinas, Huachucas, and work their way north, through the Rocky Mountains. And the same thing, those are southern species, right, moving north in migration, like what's happening right now. And then in the northern species coming south, right? So the same thing, they come down through the Rocky Mountains, and then they find these suitable habitats in these little mountain ranges, and they move through those to work their way south. So there's this bridging effect going on. There's also a couple of deserts they have to deal with, right? There's the Chihuahuan Desert and the Sonoran Desert. So those are pretty isolating. Most species don't want to cross deserts. They want to rather stay in the mountains. So they have to deal with that too. So there's a connection, right? The mountains, those Sky Islands make a connection. But they're also very isolating. Because if you don't have wings, what are you going to do if you live in a mountain? You're pretty well stuck there, right? So what did David Quammen say about islands? He called them the flywheel of evolution. So there's a really interesting thing going on in these mountains. When you're a species and you're essentially trapped there, you're surrounded by, say, Sonoran Desert to one side and the Chihuahuan Desert the other side, and you don't have wings, you have to deal with what you got. And that's kind of what nature does, nature doesn't bend the elements, they say, to suit the plants and animals, she makes the plant and animals do the bending. So we have, historically anyway, parrots in Arizona. How many of you knew that? Yeah, you've seen parrots before. This is a thick-billed parrot, right? This is a tropical species, comes up from way down in Mexico, comes up through the Sierra Madre, and just sneaks into Arizona. And historically, they lived here. They were in the Chiricahua Mountains where they bred. They moved from there to the Mogollon region where they bred. And in the 90s, late 80s, 90s, there was a couple working in the Chiricahua Mountains trying to reintroduce them. In the 1940s, unfortunately, the birds turned out to be very tasty. And not only for goshawks, but for the loggers and the miners. And so they pretty much extirpated the thick-billed parrot from the Chiricahua Mountains by eating them. Well, you're a hungry miner. What do you know? You don't care. It's roast chicken, right? You know? So Noel and Helen Snyder in the 90s tried reintroducing them in the Chiricahua Mountains, and they were partly successful. But then there was this thing called the Dude Fire in 1990 that really was a problem for the migrating. They were actually starting to migrate between the Chiricahuas and the Mogollon Rim area, and so they did reproduce maybe once or twice, but they had all kinds of really interesting problems because the parrots, they had to get the parrots from somewhere to reintroduce, right? So they would get captive bred parrots, but the captive bred parrots were kind of socially inept. They didn't know how to flock, and so they would release captive bred parrots into the forest. And they had to put up feeding stations because these parrots actually eat pine cones. They strip pine cones apart and they eat. They live in the snow belt and they eat pine cones. That's weird for a parrot. But they were kind of inept, so they'd put these feeding stations up. Well, what else figured this out pretty quickly? The goshawks. And since they were inept socially, they didn't know how to flock and watch out for goshawks, and so they just got picked off one by one by one. And the other problem was, so they actually tried using wild parrots that they would confiscate at the border, people bringing them in for the pet trade, and release those. And they were a lot better. They could flock, they could avoid the goshawks, but they came with a lot of diseases, in wild populations. So they were having trouble with those too. But so in the end, the program wasn't all that successful, but they still try. They're not working in the Chiricahuas anymore, but I hear that they're working in New Mexico with trying to reestablish the thick-billed parrot. You can see them live at the Desert Museum if you go there. If you've ever been there, they have thick-billed parrots. So this is one of my these lizards. I mean, when we talk about figuring out you're stuck in place. You have to deal with what you got. These lizards have really done it. These are grassland whiptail lizards. They're unisexual. They reproduce without males. There are no males in the population. I know it sounds kind of frightening. It was frightening for me when I learned about this, So they lay eggs. They lay eggs. The eggs hatch into little clones of the parent, and they do just fine without males. And this is how do I know that these are females? Because I know they're grassland whiptail lizards. And talk about adaptation, right? They call them animal weeds. These were first discovered in the Chiricahua Mountains, one of the Sky Islands down there, and they've since discovered like 6 or 7 more species of these whiptail lizards that are all unisexual, no males in the population. They seem to be doing this pretty well. They call them animal weeds because they can move into an area and reproduce very quickly and keep going. So they're like weeds, the way they go. But it's interesting. They've also documented sexual behavior among the females, and apparently it is. They think anyway, helps with egg production. So when I was talking about this at a reading I was doing in Point Reyes, California, afterwards, this small group of women came up to me afterwards, and they wanted pictures. They wanted pictures. I had some drawings, and they wanted pictures of the lizards because they were going to make them their mascot. So this is Samra. She's, or he, is a jaguar. You've heard about jaguars, of course. There are now like 8 documented jaguars in the Sky Island region. One just recently, a new one just recently in the Huachuca Mountains, documented by a guy that was just a guy, setting up his cameras, his wildlife cameras, and probably baiting them, but documented a new jaguar. And you've probably all heard about Macho B, right? Macho B is a sad story about, science basically gone very wrong. He was trapped inadvertently, they said originally, but it turned out that that wasn't the case, that they were actually baiting him. They knew he was there. They'd gotten him on camera and seen pictures of him, but they wanted to, these researchers wanted to trap him. And they eventually did, and they did it by baiting the trap with female jaguar scat. And most of you are probably familiar with the story, right? It kind of went very badly, and they ended up euthanizing him because jaguars don't do well when they're trapped like this. You can see them, caught that way. And they were doing this in Mexico, and they already had problems in Mexico with it, and the researchers knew that, And the only reason this all came out was because one of the researchers, her name was Janae Brunn, she told on them. She was the one that was getting the female jaguar scat from the zoo in Tucson and putting it on the traps, the leg hold traps. And so she wrote a book about it. I gave this talk in the Chiricahua Mountains, or I talked about them in the Chiricahua Mountains a couple of years ago with a group of Orion writers, and I didn't know it at the time, but Janae Brunn was in the audience, So we had some interesting discussion about this afterwards. I was glad that I didn't meet her ahead of time because I would have been really nervous about talking about her program, and what she did. But Macho B, good example of what not to do with wildlife. So this is the first ocelot in. I'm probably standing in your way. This is the first ocelot seen in Arizona. It was in Cochise County. Not a very good picture. This is taken with a wildlife camera. But we do have, ocelots, which are another species that is, far in Mexico, that are coming up through the Sky Islands. And now this was in the Whetstone Mountains, which is just a little north of the Huachuca Mountains. And this is the one ocelot that a guy photographed in the Huachuca Mountains. That's what they look like, beautiful, spotted, feline, about the size, a little larger than a house cat, but very wild, very majestic even, and living in the Sky Islands and hardly ever seen. I mean, it's a rarity to see them, especially in our part of the country. But this picture here was taken by a camera trap that my other daughter, my oldest daughter, is a wildlife biologist, and she works with the Coalition for Sonoran Desert Protection and sets cameras all over the place. And one of her cameras got this, and this was like the first documentation of a live ocelot in Arizona. So that was pretty cool. Okay, what's this? Trogon. Everybody knows this one, right? The elegant trogon. Another one of those tropical species that use the Sky Islands to come north. Pretty cool. Bird watchers love this thing. How many of you are bird watchers? Oh, we got bird watchers. Yeah, I watch birds too. I watched this one land on my yard in my post. It flew right over my head, under my porch, and landed on the fence post. And I just happened to have a camera which I do many mornings because I sit in my backyard most mornings with my camera watching birds as they come to the yard. And this is a yard bird, my yard. But they're, yeah, beautiful bird that comes up, during migration this time of year usually, comes up through the Mexican mountains, the Sierra Madres, into southeastern Arizona, and breeds, in places like Madera Canyon and the Huachuca Mountains and the Chiricahuas. Yeah, so there's another picture of it. This is one I took in the Huachuca Mountains. Not it's the same kind of bird, not the same bird. Yeah, that's an elegant trogon. Yeah, I mean, you look at it from the back, and from the front. Very beautiful bird, very tropical looking, like parrot-like, This one is a similar bird called the eared quetzal or quetzal. Not sure how you pronounce it actually. This is from the Chiricahua Mountain or the Chiricahua Mountains a couple of years ago. There was a pair of them that showed up. The first one of these was documented in like 1977 in the Chiricahua Mountains by a friend of mine, Rick Taylor. And another one of those tropical, gorgeous tropical that you wouldn't see anywhere, but in the Sky Islands. They have a song, yeah, kind of a cow song, not much of it, but yeah. Another picture over there. I got these pictures when they showed up. Bird watchers are a funny lot, right? You know the bird watchers, yeah. Something like this appears somewhere, and everybody drops everything, and they got to go see it. So we're standing in a canyon waiting for these guys to show up. They're there somewhere. They've been seen there for a few days, and I'm just checking out, the license plates, and talking to a guy that drove from Wisconsin, straight through, like in 24 hours or something like that, to be here standing on this roadside to see this bird. These are bird watchers. These are serious bird watchers. Many from California. The eared trogon, eared quetzal or eared trogon shows up. Everybody comes, and not just that. A lot of species. A bird shows up, they got to see it. They got to get it on their list, right? Those listers, they call themselves, or other people call them maybe. Bird watchers. This is probably one of my favorite photographs I've ever taken. This was in the Scotia Canyon of the Huachuca Mountains. It's a buff-breasted flycatcher. It's the same sort of thing. This little guy is never seen there except during migration in the spring when it comes up and nests. And I was walking around these canyons with my camera, and he showed up, and I turned around and snapped maybe 3 pictures. And this was one of them. Just a gorgeous little flycatcher, that spends most of its life in Mexico, but comes up because we have these beautiful Sky Island ranges. And we get turkeys. This turkey's in my front yard. It's a Gould's turkey, so they're a little larger than the typical Merriam's turkey that you see all over the country. We have a subspecies of turkey here called the Gould's turkey, and it's from Mexico also. And Game and Fish has been really good about reestablishing them in the Sky Islands. And have you ever been to Madera Canyon and seen the turkeys? Yeah, they're kind of a pain, right? Yeah, they're like everywhere. You're driving up the road and turkeys come out into the road and they're just walking along, and you're driving like at 5 miles an hour waiting for the turkeys to get out of the road. Well, it's all my fault. It is. Because the Game and Fish, I was in the, my family and I would spend a lot of time in Madera Canyon, and we stayed at the Cubos there, Madera Cubos. And I was there with my daughters one time, and the Game and Fish showed up, and they heard that there was a turkey there, and they wanted to know if it was a Gould's turkey, because they weren't going to introduce turkeys into Madera Canyon with the chance that they might interbreed with the wrong kind of turkey, So they were looking for this one female turkey to find out what it was. And I said, well, I know where she roosts, So I went and got them some feathers. So they did the genetic study. They found out that she was a Gould's turkey. And within a few months, we have hundreds of them. They did the same thing in my canyon where I live because I contacted the Game and Fish and I said, we only have 2 turkeys here. Could we get a few more? You know? And the researcher there said, well, I think I can arrange to have a few fall off the truck for you, And now we have, like hundreds of them. This is what? My friend Dick Shelton, the late Dick Shelton now, he would say, this is the rosy-breasted pushover. He liked making up bird names. Bird watchers probably heard all that before, They have some really strange names for birds that aren't true. And he was one of those. This is a rose-breasted grosbeak. Kind of rare for our area. They're really common in the east. You see them are yardbirds in the east, but in the west, not so much. But we do get them here. And this was in my yard a few years ago. This is another grosbeak. How about this one? Yellow grosbeak. This is a bird watcher's prize here. And this was in my yard last summer. In June, for whatever reason, they like to show up in June. And I was sitting at my desk. I have this nice desk that has a big window that overlooks the yard. And I was just sitting there one day looking, working on something, and I looked up, and there was this yellow grosbeak in the tree at a suet feeder, So I'm quick. I like to do eBird. How many are familiar with eBird? You post your bird sightings, So I posted it on eBird, and within like an hour, people are showing up in the yard. One guy told me he had just dipped on the yellow grosbeak in the Chiricahuas, and he was driving home all sad, because he couldn't get the yellow grosbeak, and then my post came through, and he detoured, from I-10 to my house, and he was so happy because there it was, yellow grosbeak in my tree. I have this amazing yard in Bisbee. I live in the little canyon that, if you're familiar with Bisbee, there's the tunnel, the Tunnel of Love. Well, before you get to the tunnel, about a mile short of that, there's a road called Mule Pass. And I live on Mule Pass. And it's a great spot for birds and wildlife. And you're going to see a lot of them because I have lots of pictures, not just birds. We're going to do a lot of birds, but I'm going to show you some of the other crazy wildlife I have that just show up in my yard. Yellow grosbeak. So this one you're all familiar with, right? You see these a lot. This is one of those northern species, the Steller's jay, that works its way down through the Rocky Mountains and into the Sky Islands. And it kind of replaces, if you're familiar, if you grew up in the East, the jay they have there, right? The blue jay, that in everybody's yards, always harassing people. I remember as a child being chased by them down the street, because you're near its nest or something and it's just after you, and chasing you around. So this is the western counterpart of the blue jay called the Steller's jay. And you have them here. I'm sure you have them around here. Yeah, I have them too. Not very often, but I get them in my yard. And this one you've seen a lot too, right? This is the dark-eyed junco, right? This guy, I think, thumped into a window when I was, letting him recover. But this is another one of those northern species. They nest all the way up in northern Canada and Alaska, and they come down during the wintertime and following the Sky Island chain, and spend the winter with us. And there's like all these different races of dark-eyed junco. So Oregon junco and pink-sided. I think this is a pink-sided, and gray-headed, a bunch of different ones. We also have a yellow-eyed junco, which is kind of the counterpart to this guy. With dark eyes come down right from the north. The yellow-eyed junco barely comes into into Arizona from Mexico, from the Sierra Madre. Just barely peeks in. But I'll get him in the yard. Like just the other day, I think it was the day before yesterday, I had both dark-eyed juncos and one yellow-eyed junco together. Kind of cool. Crossing paths. This is another one of those bird watchers prizes. Anybody know what this is? The tanager, flame-colored tanager. This is one that people come from all over to see. And this one, again, was in my yard last summer. Go figure, I don't know, But, I post something like this and, you know, my wife is like, well, you better get some chairs out because they'll be here. And they do, they come. Flame-colored tanager is another one of those species that comes up from Mexico. Very tropical bird and just as far north as southeastern Arizona. And I think they've been documented as nesting there too. Another shot of them, same guy. Beautiful bird. Painted redstart, right? You've seen these guys. It's a pretty common bird, but another one that comes up from Mexico, the Sky Islands, you know. Okay, this guy. Anybody recognize this bird? Boy, do I have a story for you. So I'm sitting in my backyard. It's June 15th, 2022. And I'm sitting there as I usually do every morning with my camera and my, binoculars. And this bird appears in the apple tree, and I don't know what it is. And so I start taking pictures. This is one of the first pictures I took. And it stays, and it starts. I made a little trickle fountain that's kind of underneath the apple tree. And when I put this in during the pandemic. I became a bird watcher during the pandemic, like most people. Suddenly we have bird watchers everywhere, and they're all doing like backyard bird watching. Amy Tan has written a book about it. I just blog about it. So this trickle fountain changed everything. I mean, suddenly I had all these species of birds I'd never seen before coming just for water. And so that's what this guy was doing. So he came into the apple tree, and then he started working his way down to the fountain. Another shot of him. He's got an orange bill. So that'll give you a hint of what his name is. I didn't know at the time. I thought, I looked at him and I thought, that's some kind of thrush. It looks like a thrush. Kind of has that tail like a thrush. But I'd never seen one with with an orange bill and like those orange feet, orange legs. So he's at the fountain now. He went down, got a drink, and he's working his way back up. And then this was like one of the last shots I got of him before he took off. I thought, when I was talking to people about it later, I thought he'd been there for like 20 minutes, and I looked at my images. I got 63 images. And I looked at him, and it was 3 minutes. 3 minutes. I started thinking, I could have been getting another cup of coffee and missed this entire thing, because I took the images inside to my wife, and I said, I don't know what this is. What do you think? And I showed them to her, and she's like, well, let's look at the book, and we're going through a Sibley's guide, and she says, it looks like this one. And I'm like, yeah, but those don't come to Arizona. And she says, well, I don't know what to tell you. It looks like this one. And I said, well, if I post it on eBird, you know what's going to happen? And she said, you better put some clothes on. So I did. With the photographs, I posted it on eBird, and I went ahead with the identification of an orange-billed nightingale thrush, which was from the Sibley guide, right? And everything broke loose. I mean, I started getting phone calls. I started getting text messages. Everybody was like, oh my God, And I'm like, whatever. And so they're all like, well, can we come and see it? And I said, well, it was here, for a few minutes, but you're welcome to come and see if it comes back, So like within 2 hours, I had 50 people in my backyard waiting to see this bird. 50 people. That's because it had never before been seen in Arizona. It did not come back. So this is a first state record of an orange-billed nightingale thrush from my backyard in Arizona, and it never came back. A lot of people waited for it. They waited all day for it until it got dark. They were back the next day before light, wandering around, playing the call of the orange-billed nightingale thrush, hoping it would show up, and it never came back. So I'm the only one that has ever seen an orange-billed nightingale thrush in Arizona. They're actually, they're in Mexico. So, a lot of people go down to like Alamos and see them there along the Rio Cuchahaki. I think it is Rio Cuchahaki. I saw chacalacas on the Rio Cuchahaki one time. I just love saying that. Chacalacas on the Rio Cuchahaki. So, so yeah, it's one of those Mexican species that right now just barely comes in to Arizona at least once. And I've been looking for it since. I've watched it every day, pretty much every day out there, hoping that it will come back. I don't know. It might not. My friends are like, well, it probably went north, and then you should look for it in the fall when it comes back south. And I'm like, I think it went back to Mexico. Orange-billed nightingale thrush. So you know what this is, right? The hummingbird. We get lots of hummingbirds. Right now it's migration. All winter long I get like Annas, right? Because they're pretty much resident here, you know. But then start about February, March, I start getting, usually the first ones that come through are this one, the Rufus, because they got a long way to go, right? We're going from like Central America all the way up to Alaska. So they got a long way to go. So they come through fast. So little calliope hummingbird, broadbill hummingbird. You've probably seen those in your yard, right? This is a blue-throated, I think it's a female blue-throated hummingbird. Pretty common along river corridors and stuff. Violet crown hummingbird, yeah. So these are all in from my yard. And so I get like 12 species of hummingbirds through the summer in my yard. It's really cool. I mean, and they're there like, off and on all summer long. And last summer I got my first barrel-line hummingbird, which I couldn't get pictures of. I don't think I did anyway. But so number 13. So I'm always waiting for, like, I haven't seen a white-eared hummingbird yet, but they're in the area. So I'm just always hopeful. What my yard has become is this like place of like sincere hope for birds. I get up, at first light, and I make coffee and I get out in the yard with my coffee and I sit there sometimes for like 3 hours and I don't move. I'm just waiting for the next, orange-billed nightingale thrush. You never know. This is a violet-crowned hummingbird. See, it has a little violet color on its head. It's the only hummingbird that doesn't have the big gorget, the big color on its throat and chin. And it's a very large hummingbird. And it's another tropical species that barely comes into Arizona. This is another birdwatcher's prize. And this is from, I think I got this picture just last week. This is a Lucifer hummingbird. Awesome name, Lucifer hummingbird. Everybody's always going, why do they call it that? I don't know, because it's evil? No, because Lucifer means light bearer. And look at this guy, he brings the light. That's why they call him Lucifer. So my neighbor, she usually gets them before I do, and she gets like multiples, the male and the female Lucifer, and sometimes she'll have like 2 pairs, and I'm still waiting for my first Lucifer to show up, So she started calling herself Lucifer's mistress. That's what I call her too. But that's a male Lucifer hummingbird. They have this beautiful gorget, and long decurved, down-curved bill. And people come from all over the world to see them in southeastern Arizona, and a couple places, I think in Texas, maybe New Mexico, where they come up to. That's the female Lucifer. I mean, I think she's just as beautiful. She has this real buttery, buffy color, with a big, long, curved bill. But they come up and they breed in southeastern Arizona. Yeah, whiskered screech owl, we get those, in a telephone pole. You know what this is? This is the littlest owl on the whole planet, the elf owl. Yeah. So I'm going back and forth having an issue with APS right now. APS is Arizona Public Service, you know, the electric company that services us, because I found out in when they were out there marking the pole that they want to take down the power pole and replace it with another one because it's old, full of holes. And I'm like, wait a minute, you want to take down the pole? No, 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 no. There are elf owls that nest in this pole. That's what those holes are, you know. And so they gave me a reprieve. They said, well, okay, we'll let you have one more nesting season. And so my neighbors are building boxes for me, you know, elf owl nesting boxes, and I'm putting them up in the trees. And I'm hoping that when they come to remove the pole, I can get them to leave it in place and just put a new pole up, you know, and move all your equipment over there, you know. Yeah, so you guys agree. So everybody write letters. We want to save the elf owls. And my neighbor Lucifer's mistress, she's like, yeah, we should picket. We should chain ourselves to the power pole when they come, you know. I'm like, yeah, you go for it. Yeah, let's do that. But yeah, they're beautiful, little tiny owl. You know, they arrive usually about the end of March, and the males come first, and they start calling to each other, you know, or setting up territories, not really calling to each other, I guess. And then the females arrive, and then they, you know, they're there all summer, and they, you know, raise their little nestlings and stuff. So, I mean, you know, where else do you find elf owls? Zone-tailed hawk, they're more riparian corridor, I think, but we do get them in the Mule Mountains. That's the mountain range that I live in, is Mule Mountains. Another picture of the zone-tail. So there's more than birds, you know. I get, you know, in these mountains. This is a garter snake, you know, that we get there. Quite a few. This is a Sonoran mountain king snake, they call him. I mean, this guy was in the road, and so I graciously, you know, removed him from the road, and he like bit me in the arm. You know, I don't get it. You know, it's like, hey, you know, I'm being nice here. I'm just putting you on the side of the road so you don't get run over. But they're a species that you find only in like the Sky Islands, you know, the mountain king snake. And you see, would it be weird to have them here? Probably not. Did you? Yeah, you sure it was? Yeah, mountain king snake. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people mistake them for coral snakes. You know. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tell because you know they're not like a coral snake. See, the head starts out with that white, that kind of creamy color, where a coral snake has a black head. So, and you know, I mean, people want to know because they probably want to kill them. I always tell them, no, you know, they were here before you were. You know, just leave them alone; they'll be fine. You know, a coral snake. I don't think there's ever been a death from a coral snake. And if there was, it's because somebody picked one up and was handling it, and it bit them between the fingers. Yeah, yeah. It's mostly the same thing with rattlesnakes. You know, most rattlesnake bites because people are fooling around rather than, you know, being surprised by them. And so I've told all my neighbors, you know, if you see a rattlesnake and you don't like where it is, like it's on your porch or something, call me. I'll come get it. You know, and I've done that. You know, Lucifer's mistress called me, you know, not too long ago because she had a rattlesnake coiled up on her back porch and she didn't like it. And I'm like, I got a bucket. I'll be there in a minute. You know. And she's like, where are you taking it? And I'm saying, I'm taking it to my house. I got mice. You know? Bull snake, or gopher snake, actually, is what they're actually called, but most people call them bull snakes. This guy was like 6 feet. I mean, they're wonderful to have around. They get mistaken for rattlesnakes a lot. They do rattle, you know, but they don't have rattles, right? They rattle without rattles. But yeah, this one I think was trying to get in the chicken coop. Now this is a black-tailed rattlesnake. This was on a trail, a hiking trail in I think the Chiricahua Mountains when I was up there. See the black tail on the back? Yeah, the raised rattle and the black tail, that's where they get their name from. And they're kind of green. A lot of people call them Mojave green, but they're not. They're not Mojave rattlesnakes. They're black tails. And you know, so he was in the trail. So you just wait for them to move on, or get a long stick and kind of, you know, help them along a little bit, you know. And he eventually got off the trail. No big deal. So we have really cool rattlesnakes in Arizona. There's like, I think we have 12 or 14 species and 18 maybe with subspecies. And some of them are just really interesting. Like in the Sky Islands, there are rattlesnakes that live at 10,000 feet. Rattlesnakes. And they eat lizards. They don't even eat mammals, they eat lizards. This is one of the small ones. This is a banded rock rattlesnake. And this is from the Huachuca Mountains. You can see it does have rattles. So the banded rock is one, kind of a small, maybe 18 inches at most. This is a ridge-nosed rattlesnake. Anybody know what this is? A ridge-nosed rattlesnake. Arizona has a state reptile. And this is it. The ridge-nosed rattlesnake is the state reptile of Arizona. Yay. This was Huachuca Mountains, I think. It took me a long time to find this guy. It was in my book, Chasing Arizona, I wanted to find all of the 12 symbols of Arizona. Cactus wren, right? State bird. We have a state flower. The saguaro bloom. A lot of people think it's the California poppy. Not true. Not the California poppy. It's the saguaro bloom. That's my friend Dick Shelton. What is the state flower of Arizona? The California poppy. So I wanted to find all the state symbols, and the rattlesnake was the most difficult one because they only live in a few little canyons in the Huachuca Mountains and a couple other little ranges. And so I spent a long time with a friend of mine who lived in a cave for 8 years. And, I figured, if you're going to live in a cave for 8 years, you got to be really good about finding snakes. His name was Walker Thomas. He was really good, and he actually did help me find it. And it was like, we spent like weeks and weeks and weeks, and then a whole weekend camping, hunting, climbing all over the Huachuca Mountains. And then on the last day, it's always the last day, right? We're driving out, and there it is in the middle of the road. Yay! I told him, I said, we should have just gotten in the car and driven around. I think that's how most, real herpetologists do it. They just drive up roads at night. Ridge-nosed rattlesnake. So this is the what's this one? This is another twin spot rattlesnake. This is another one that's at like 10,000 feet in the Chiricahua Mountains and feeds on lizards, but just not very long, And they live in like in the snow belt. I mean, you'll see them out there sunning themselves with snow all around them. Pretty cool for a rattlesnake. And then there's a horned lizards, the short horn. And most of you have probably seen the regal, which has all the horns, but this is the short horn. And the alligator lizard, another one that's specific to these ranges in the mountains. Alligator lizard. This one you recognize right now. He's not really so much in the mountains. You'll find him just about everywhere. But this is, now, if you're going to have a state reptile, I mean, ridge-nosed rattlesnake, have you guys ever heard of a ridge-nosed rattlesnake? No. If you're going to have a state reptile, who voted for the ridge-nosed rattlesnake? This guy. I mean, a Gila monster, right? There are, and he's venomous. There are only 2 venomous lizards on the planet. One of them is the Gila monster. The other one is the Mexican beaded lizard, which is in Mexico, So, and they're here. They live with us. They're in Arizona. I mean, if anything is, representative of Arizona, it should be a big poisonous lizard, But I don't know. I think it was school children or something that made all these selections. That's one of my favorite. I love the guys. They hiss, they snarl, they make a big fuss, but they're really pretty tame. Unfortunately, they get on the road a lot. So this guy probably was moving out of something. Well, I think this guy, he was in an irrigation box. And so somebody had called me and said, can you get this big, ugly lizard out of this box for me? I'm like, yeah. Yeah. Little red spotted toad. I mean, we have really cool toads too. I mean, red spotted toads. Couches, spadefoots. Well, I guess they're not called toads anymore, but they're called spadefoots. They're the ones that sound like, you know, the monsoons come and they sound like lambs bleating, you know, you know. And they're one of the fastest breeders. They lay eggs when the monsoons flood the washes. They lay eggs, and within 9 days you have new baby toadlets. I mean, that's fast, you know. Eggs, tadpole, toadlet, done. 9 days, you know. Yeah,
How many species are there?
of like toads. I don't know, dozens, lots, quite a few toads. They have one of the coolest ones is and the one that probably most of you are aware of is used to call it the Colorado River toad, and now it's called the Sonoran Desert toad. It's a great big, I mean, they could be dinner plate size, and they show up on your front porch because you leave the light on and there's bugs, and so the toad's there and he's lapping up those big bugs, you know, and just you know, I've seen people unfortunately, you know, in evil places throw them cigarette butts and they'll lap those up too. Terrible, isn't it? You know, some people, I don't get it. So this is a venomous toad. It has well, not venomous, poisonous. It has glands on the side of its head that secrete toxin. And if dogs, you know, get a hold of the toad, it can be very serious for them. But it's hallucinogenic. So those evil people I know in places collect. They're not evil people. They're just, you know, they're people I refer to in low places sometimes. And they like to collect the poison and they put it on aluminum foil. See, if you lick the toad, I don't recommend it, but there are people who lick toads. It doesn't work as well because it'll just make you sick, right? Licking toads, don't do that. But I don't recommend this either. But if you take the poison and you put it on a little slip of like aluminum foil and then you roll it up and then you light it, you burn it, you get a vapor off of it, and that's hallucinogenic. They're called toad rollies. Don't do that. Not recommended. I know people in low places. Okay. But I mean, really cool animals, right? So you know, there's a reason that they have, you know, poison, right? They don't want to be eaten by, say, you know, Fido or whatever. So you know, you usually find them in your pool. So you get them out of the pool and hope that your dogs don't mess with them. But this is the red spotted toad. They don't have any poisonous glands that I'm aware of anyway. And these are some of our little frogs that you find up there in the canyons of the Sky Islands, called canyon tree frogs. So it's the same frog, but what do you think's happening with one of them or the other one? See, one of them is in the white part of the rock, right? So he's white. And the other one is in the speckled part of the rock, so he's decided to be speckled. Pretty amazing adaptation to remain pretty invisible. And canyon tree frogs are just beautiful. They're, you know, in the summertime you know, they're croaking in the pools and I've been there. Yeah, I've been there camping in a canyon somewhere, and all you hear is croaking. Yeah, it can be really charming at first, and it's like, are they ever going to quit? You know, I can't sleep. This is another picture of one there, a little canyon tree frog. So this is the leopard frog. You hear a lot about these guys because they're trying to reintroduce them into the Sky Islands. A native frog, kind of important frog. It's really unusual in that they vocalize underwater. So their mating call is underwater, and people think that the scientists think that maybe they do that because, you know, when you're croaking, you're in danger of being, you know, singled out by a predator, right? So if you could call for a mate underwater, you know, and the mate, you know, presumably is in the water too, you know, try that. Why not? Maybe that will work. You know, so that's kind of cool. But yeah, leopard, that's the Chiricahua leopard frog. Mountain lions, these were taken on my camera trap that I have set up there. I have several different wildlife cameras set up. I mean, you know, we live with mountain lions. They're all around. You probably have seen them here. And if you don't see them, they've seen you, you know, no doubt. You know, they're out there. and they're mostly minding their own business. I have some skulls up here. One of them is of a mountain lion that I was hiking one day up near my house, and I came across a dead mountain lion that was mostly picked over by vultures. And so I collected his skull. If anybody wants to hold it, I can pass it around. Kind of like, anyway, you can look at it later. But yeah, the cool part of these guys is I also collected one of his paws. So this is a mountain lion paw. This is the front paw, of course. I mean, it's it very looks like it could be your kitty, but it's bigger. you know. So, but yeah, so a friend of mine shared with me how he deals with because you find a skull, it's really cool, but it's covered with skin and flesh and stuff. So he said all you do is you take the skull and you put it in a bucket of water and you just leave it for months. Cover the bucket and leave it for a couple months, and then after a couple months, dump it out and you have a skull. So that's what I did. With these and the other skulls there, it worked out really well. You just let the bacteria do their job, and you'll end up rinsing it off quite a bit afterwards. But so with this guy, when I finished him up in a big bucket of water, I took the bucket out, and I thought, well, I should water one of my trees, so I poured it out on the ground, fertilizer, right? Sort of, And I went inside and I'm working at my desk, and I look out there and it's like, what is that? And there's two turkey vultures. And they're sitting on the ground next to the wet spot that I poured out on the ground. And they're like, something smells really good. But we can't find it, It's just like, where is it? Turkey vultures have an amazing sense of smell. I think I have a couple mountain lion pictures here. This is another one from the camera. And this is just up canyon from where I live. This one here, okay, I think there's at least 3 mountain lions in this picture. You see them all? Yeah, there's kittens. So there's one that's going right in the front there that's kind of off camera. He's moving towards the camera. You get just his tail and stuff. And then there's a little kitten underneath the fallen tree. And then the mother is up on the top there, and she's probably looking back at another. I think there were 3 kittens. I got these quite a lot on camera when they were there. It's pretty cool. The camera was in a great location. I went up there one time to change the flash drive out of it, and there was a dead deer, mountain lion killed deer, right in front of the camera. And I thought, oh, this is going to be really good, And it was. I got lots of mountain lion shots where I didn't get it in the action of killing the deer, but as it came back to feed on the deer over a period of like weeks and months. But yeah, it was a nice like 3-point whitetail. So this is another camera shot, which is probably one of the better ones. So there's a mountain lion in the back snarling at a coati in the front. I have a little coati skull up there also. You know the coati? You're familiar with the coati? You have them around here, right? It's another one of those species coming up from Mexico, and moving further north all the time. It's I always call it like a cross between a raccoon and a monkey. They're darling, they're cute, they're diurnal, so they're out during the day. So you usually see them a lot. And when the little ones come out, this is Cody here, the coati. So the little ones come out and they're just darling, their little tails in the air, and yeah. This is kind of the way my kids react, Dad, they're so cute. Like, yeah, but then there's this guy, he's the coati troops are fine. They usually come through, they'll maybe pull down a few bird feeders or whatever, and then they move on. But the males, the reason there was 2 names for them, Coatimundi and coati, was because they thought they were 2 different species, but they're not. They're all coati. The males kind of hang out with themselves. They don't go with the troops of mostly females and young, and they can be a real pain. This guy decided he wanted to live in our house. And unfortunately, at the time, I was traveling. So I was gone for like a couple of weeks. And my wife was working during the day, and she'd come home in the evening, and the house smelled really bad. And she knew something was up. So she found this guy in the laundry room, up on top of some shelves, looking at her like, well, what are you going to do? You know? And she was like, I don't know what to do. You know, you take care of this. I'm like, well, I'm not there. So she'd come home every day and she'd find something new, you know, like a little nest on the couch where I swear he was probably watching DVDs or something. You know? I mean, he was getting into things, pulling things down, you know, it just made his place, our place, his home, you know. And so eventually she just got fed up. She called my oldest daughter, Jessica, the wildlife biologist, and she got a hold of the Game and Fish and the Fish and Wildlife, and they came down and they brought a great big trap, and they set the trap in the laundry room and baited it with watermelon. Apparently, watermelon really they can't avoid watermelon, and they caught him right off. You know, bang. She came home from work. She looked in the laundry room. Yeah, you caught him. He's mad. You know, he's looking at me, and he's in the cage, and he's mad. Come and get him. So he's now Cody, the coati at the Desert Museum. That's where he ended up. Yeah, I know, they're darling. So this is another darling one. This is the ringtail cat, right? They also like living in your house. And this was over Christmas, and all the kids were visiting with their husbands. And, you know, each night something, you know, was weird. We had a lot of, you know, there was a gingerbread house that we'd made. There were Christmas cookies out, you know, and like suddenly there was like things missing. You know, somebody was picking all the you know, the little what do you call them, on the little candies off of the gingerbread house, you know, and leaving not so nice little presents and little dishes, you know. And my son-in-law is like, there's been something coming down. He's coming down from the attic, and he's roaming around in the kitchen at like 3 a.m., you know. And I said, really? He said, yeah. He says, I'm going to catch it. So he baited. He cornered it in in the kitchen in the trash can or something. Yeah, this is a shot where it's actually in the trash can, and he baited it with some cat food, you know. So, you know, my daughters are all like, but Dad, he's so cute. And I'm like, yeah, not at 3 a.m, you know. But ringtail, they call them ringtail cats or ringtails, um, kind of related to raccoons, kind of in that family, raccoons and coati. But miners' cats, they used to call them, because they like to hang out around, you know, people where they, you know. So does anybody know what this is? Possum. Did you know we have possums in Arizona? So there is a Virginia possum in Arizona. This is not a Virginia possum. But the Virginia possum that's in Arizona isn't actually from Arizona. Because I talked to the game and fish dude that was, you know, dealing with possums in Arizona. And he said that there was this guy in the 1940s that would go east, Texas or Louisiana or something like that, and trap Virginia possums, bring them to Arizona, and let them go. And he was doing this on a regular basis. They called him, the game and fish official called him the Johnny Appleseed of possum. It was a real problem for the game and fish. You know, you don't want non-native species, you know, in your, you know, state messing things up. So yeah, we have Virginia possums, but this is a Mexican opossum. Now, I've heard that there are Mexican opossums in Mexico and that they kind of creep into southern Arizona. You know, I thought I found one time in a drainage that was in the Santa Cruz River where it flowed into Mexico. I thought I found the carcass of one time there, but that was the only thing I had ever known about or seen about um, the Mexican opossum. Until the other night, this was probably 3 months ago, I guess, the chickens were having a fit, Have you ever heard the phrase, if you want to see wildlife, try raising chickens? It is so true. I mean, I've never had chickens killed by wildlife, but I see a lot of wildlife as they're trying to get in there and get the chickens, you know. So the chickens are having a fit. They're screaming bloody murder. It's like, what is wrong with you guys? And I'm out there, it's the middle of the night, and this guy, do I have a picture of him in the coop? No. So um, so this guy he's got his mouth around one of the chicken and he's dragging it around, but he can't do it any real damage, you know, but the chicken is screaming bloody murder, you know. And I'm like, what is that? And it turned out it was a Mexican opossum. So I chased it off and locked the chickens up, got chickens back in their coop and locked them up, you know. And I've been setting, I set a live trap because I have a problem with skunks. I've trapped 41 skunks to date, something like that. You know, and I release them, you know, 5 miles away, like the game of fish told me to do, and I start to recognize them after a while. It's like, I've seen you before, you know. I know you're the one that likes tuna, you know. So I had set the trap, and he was in the trap, this opossum, the next day. So I got this picture of him because I wasn't going to do like I do with the skunks. I was going to release him nearby, and so I took him down to this piece of property we have and let him go in the tree and snapped a picture of him. But I mean, you know, I never imagined I'd see, like, you know, an opossum in my yard chasing the chickens, a Mexican opossum. So marsupial, right? The only marsupial in North America, right? The prehensile tail, really cool animals. We have coos deer. They're all over the place down there. You probably, I don't know if you have them up here. No, they're a subspecies of whitetail, kind of a smaller deer. It's one of those island effects, you know, where species kind of change, you know, somewhat because of, you know, the habitat they're in, and living in a smaller region like a sky island, you know, changes you a bit. Sometimes you grow very large, sometimes you grow very small. So the coos or cows, whitetail, is one of the smaller subspecies of whitetail. And you've probably seen these, you put your hummingbird feeders out in late summer and you go out in the morning, it's like, this was full yesterday, you know, and now it's empty, you know. So what happened, you know? So these are nectar feeding bats. There's two species of them. One of them wears pantaloons, that's this guy. See, he has pantaloons on. And this one has a skirt. So that's how you tell them apart. It's a lesser long nose and Mexican long tongued bat. So, but I mean, they love hummingbird feeders. And if you leave your feeders out at night, if you go down the Chiricahua Mountains and you see their hummingbird feeders down there, they have cages around them. You think, why do you have to put cages around hummingbird feeders? Well, it's because of these guys. So if you don't cage your hummingbird feeders in about August, they will drain them. They just work them and drain them all night long. But pretty cool. They're another species coming up from Mexico, and they follow blooming agave. So that's what they normally feed on, like the saguaro cactus blooms and agave blooms, because they're nectar feeders. They don't eat anything else but nectar, and they just follow the bloom as those agave are blooming, going north. They just follow those blooms. This is one on flowers, night blooming cereus, I think. And then there's these guys, everybody loves a tarantula, right? You know, so they're everywhere. And my last picture is the state butterfly, the two-tailed swallowtail. I've been paying much attention to the time, but we should, you know, we could give you a few minutes for questions, you know, and if I have answers, I'm willing to share. So, any questions?
Yeah,
You want to see my yard? Yeah. You're welcome anytime. The yard is open. Bird watchers come down. They don't even announce themselves anymore. You know, they just come down. You know, it's like my son-in-law was visiting the other day, and he's like, "There's some people out in the front yard," and I'm like, "Yeah, they're probably bird watchers." He says, "Yeah, but they're just sitting there." You know, so I go out there, you know, and they're in their car, and they're like, we came for the Cassens finches you posted this morning. Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, they're up in the tree. Yeah, they're up in the tree. Okay. And then they went away. They didn't even get out of their car. They just drove up, got their Cassen finches in the tree, and then drove away. It's like, I mean, those are kind of nice visitors, right? Ones that don't even get out of the car. But you see them, I can always tell, they have binoculars or hanging or a camera or something like that. So I can usually tell what's going on. It's like, come on into the yard, and maybe you'll see an orange-billed nightingale thrush. Good luck with that one. Yes.
So it's Sky Highlands.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a are the Chisos Mountains?
Kind of surrounded by desert. I think it's kind of been adopted in other areas, even in other countries as a term. But it was originally coined here by this guy, Weldon Heal, that lived in the Chiricahua Mountains. And he meant it specifically for this kind of mountain range. And usually they're mountains that go from like desert up to like pines. There's like 6 life zones that go through there. So they're they really do become kind of island habitats. Species that live in the upper part of those mountains wouldn't do well in the desert, and so they're trapped there. And so that's where he came from. But it has been adopted for other regions. I mean, any mountain that you have that's like sitting in a desert that has pines on the top of it could be essentially a sky island, because it have the same kind of function. Species are unable to move, unless they have wings, unable to move. Sure.
So in our geographical area, would the Santa Maria Mountains north of here and the Wallapai Mountains be considered Sky Island?
Probably, I think, because we're kind of in the northwestern region of Arizona, or kind of like that, and it moves. Those sky islands they consider move kind of obliquely from northwest Arizona to southeast Arizona. So, but yeah, if you want to use the term, I think it would be fine, especially if the mountains are different on the top than they are at the bottom. Yes, in the back.
Yeah, talking about migration from
Yeah, they're another one. Yeah, they're the collared peccary, right? So all the way south, Central America, probably South America, they're a species, and they're not pigs. A lot of people call them desert pigs, whatever, but they're not related. They're not even closely related to pigs. They're more closely related to like a hippopotamus than a pig. So they're a particular kind of artiodactyl, they call them, with the cloven hoof. And they originated in like probably Central America or somewhere about, and they've just been working their way. Native American middens, where archaeologists go to find Native American sites, they look for the middens, because that was the trash pile where the Native Americans threw all their whatever bones, scraps, and stuff like that. They don't find javelina bones in middens. So they're a recent phenomenon, javelina, probably in the last, I would guess, 100, 150 years. And they're gradually moving north. I mean, I thought it was funny to see javelina in Flagstaff, but they're there, and same with a lot of the other species. The coati, same thing. They're moving north. Apparently the possum, same thing, Mexican possum working its way north, And maybe it's a result of global warming, possibly. Maybe it's just that they're finding new habitat and they're taking advantage of it. Animals are pretty wild, Sounds kind of obvious, right? But they figure it out. It's an amazing thing. They figure it out. They figure out how to live. They know what they need, and they go and get it. If it happens to be your yard, I hate having javelinas in my yard. They really tear things up, But I mean, this is their home, right? So, yes.
You wrote several books. Which is your favorite book and why?
Wow. So my most recent book is Chasing Arizona. That was probably my funnest book, because it was all about, and I got to use humor, and I dragged my wife with me a lot of times, and she was like, I was always like, I want to stay in a historic hotel because they're so cool. And she's like, they only call them historic because they won't fix the plumbing, things like that. So, but it was stuff like that, and I got to look for the 12 symbols. I got to really find out what it was to be, an Arizonan, And at the time, I did most of the research in 2012, so it was our centennial, and there was talk about making the chimichanga our first state food, So I was chasing chimichangas everywhere, trying to find the best chimichanga, And so that was, I would say that was my funnest book to write. But my favorite book, I think, is my first, Wilderness and Razor Wire, which I think there's a copy of it up here. Yeah. So this book was my first book. It's about the nature that I found when I was locked up in prison. And it won the 2002 John Burroughs Medal for natural history writing. So yeah, this is probably my favorite book. This is my wife's least favorite book. She likes the other one, Chasing. This is Chasing Arizona. See, it has a chimichanga on the cover. Yeah. This one's a little more entertaining. Yeah, that's another story. Yeah, that was a while ago. Yeah, I was very young and stupid.
How's Trump going to keep all this money?
Yeah, he's going to build another wall, right? Yeah, walls don't work. I mean, I have pictures of mountain lion and something else recently too, but I have one of a mountain lion that's on top of the wall. It's like, the wildlife are going to figure it out. They just climb over the thing, which is what they're doing. The wildlife that can, climb over it. So, yeah, I'm not for walls. I'm for building bridges. We are, Arizona, we are largely Mexico, I mean, their culture, everything was here long before we were here. And they're wonderful people, and I love traveling there. And, it's like, why can't we just be good neighbors and take down the walls, But I'm not going to get political. It's not a political thing, So I'm for the wildlife, We need the wildlife. Yes.
You see all of this coming north. Is there a place in Mexico where most of these species exist?
Yeah, the Sierra Madres. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Sierra Madres, the mountain ranges. I don't recommend traveling there alone, but there are groups that can take you in there, And a place like Alamos, beautiful little community in the southern part of Sonora, Mexico, where you can see a lot of these species, and they're like yard birds there, So yeah, so they're great things to see. Yeah, so yeah, if you get a chance, go to Mexico. And, you can come to my yard if you want, but if you can't, go to Mexico.
Tell your daughter it's on my favorite.
Oh, I will. Yeah, I will. Yeah, she's amazing. I could talk a lot about my daughter too, but I'll save you that. So, way in the back, yes.
Yeah, are there any state parks that are
Like a Sky Island State Park. There's the Catalina Mountains, but there's Catalina State Park, but it's at the base of Catalina Mountains. So something like that, maybe. I don't know if I can't think of a state park that's in the mountains. Carpenter Caverns is a state park now. Yeah, Kit Peak is a good one. That's well, thank you all. I appreciate it. Great audience.
That was amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.